when you've seen a leek or a carrot or a beetroot planted and it's growing for 3 months and through the winter, and you finally pull it out of the ground, the flavour in it and the work that's gone into it that you've seen makes it so much more luxurious than any bump of caviar or any, piece of farmed beef.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. In the fast-paced world of hospitality, where guest expectation and experience is paramount, how do you find a balance to ensure one's own vision and ethos too? Tom Campbell is the co-owner of Thelma in Piccadilly in the Adelaide Hills in South Australia. Tom, how are you?
Really well, thank you. How are you going?
I'm good. It's exciting times for you. You're on the verge of opening something new. How are things going?
Well, it's been a wild ride. As you say, probably when this comes out, we should be open. It's kind of been a dream and kind of hope over a few years to open something. And me and a few friends have formed this goal and plan, and it's finally come to fruition.
Tell us a little bit about Thelma. What is it that you're doing?
Well, it came as a byproduct of my good friend James Spreadbury, who I think you spoke to a few weeks ago, and his brother Tim. They're both very, very talented in the hospitality world, and well versed in everything from restaurants to now. Tim is an amazing organic vegetable farmer. So they were both living overseas. James in Copenhagen and Tim in Copenhagen and France and England as well. And we, over the years, kind of chatted about doing a project. And through those years, we kind of formed this plan to do something on a farm. And another good friend kind of came on board, Olivia Moore, who has a little wine bar in the city called Locke Bottle Bar. And we, move forward with this idea of doing something on a farm. And over the past few months, we have been doing pop-ups where Tim grows his vegetables. And the dream would have been to continue that, and maybe, it still may continue to happen, but with issues with council, which with this new project we're actually struggling with as well at the moment. With issues with the council, it kind of became not really, it wasn't possible to do it as a permanent thing. And then some of our friends were running a really beautiful little bakery cafe just down the road from where we were doing these pop-ups, and they are having their first child, and it became too much for them, and they kind of reached out to us and asked us to take over the space. So that's where we're at. We've been elbows deep, just ripping off tiles, painting, sanding, choosing colours and then painting things and looking at the colour and thinking, oh, gee whiz, I'm not sure if this is the right colour, but it's been it's been a great learning experience for all of us. It's been a lot. In between, at the moment in Adelaide, there's Tasting Australia is on, which is a big food festival. So in between having commitments with that and pulling off tiles and sanding floors, it's been quite a busy time. Yeah.
How are you feeling about it? It's a project that you've been talking about for years, and it's arriving. So how are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling very excited, a little bit, nervous as well, because I think it's something we have put so much time and effort into, and it has evolved over the years to something maybe not what we originally envisioned, but I think it is hopefully a stepping stone to what we do want to achieve in the future. You know, moving back to that something, having something on the farm, or something a little bit more focused and refined. Whereas this is a more, I guess, more casual and approachable offering, but we'll still be. I mean, we will still be, you know, quite ambitious in what we do. But yeah, it's a different kind of thing. I guess it will be a new experience for me and for James and for Liv, focusing on something that's quite casual. Like we will have a morning offering, which will be some sort of, not breakfast per se, but some sort of morning offering, pastries, baking, baked goods, and then moving into a more bistro style lunch, which I think with what we all love, our ethos and our philosophy is very ingredients focused, and we've all been involved in natural wine and farming, and we love to eat in a certain way, which I think it leans more towards a European style. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. I think it will evolve over the years as well, but it's going to be a different thing to what I'm used to. Yeah, to a kitchen that I'm used to being in. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Well, I want to talk about it a little bit more later. But first, you've done so much in your career already, even though you're still quite young. But so take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play for you?
Well, I grew up in, I feel very fortunate to have grown up in a wine region south of Adelaide called McLaren Vale. Um, I grew up on a property in between Wollonga and McLaren Vale. And I, I guess I didn't realize at the time how much food played a part in my childhood, but I was always quite a healthy, uh, well-fed child, let's say, um, and I just love food. And I think it probably stemmed from my mum's side of the family is Greek Cypriot, so they immigrated here when she was 4 years old, and so whenever we would go around to her parents' house, there would always be food. There would be dolmades, and there would be these, baklava, or these sweet desserts and really beautiful stews and things made with so much love. And as soon as I'd walk in the door, there would always be, are you hungry? And even if I said, oh, probably not, they'd be like, eat. You need to eat. And I think through that, I just started to love food. And my mum, she was a great cook. And my dad's kind of, I think, he's slowly learnt to become a great cook. But through that, I think eating and sitting around a table with family, I just developed such a love for food. But I think I never thought it was an option for a career. Through high school or through school, I was focused and kind of being given the idea that the option for me was to go to uni. And I guess when I finished school, I'd already been working in restaurants for probably since I was 12 or 13, just washing dishes and, cleaning up and helping with little prep jobs here and there. And I think there was a spark then that I thought, oh, I really like this, and you feel like you're a part of something, and it felt special, but I I just kind of didn't ever consider it as an option. So when I finished school, I applied for uni and got into to study marine biology, which I'm still very interested in. Yeah, it was something that I love the ocean, I love the coasts, and yeah, I'm quite interested in the climate and all of that. But yeah, so I got into that, and at the same time, I feel like the trajectory of my I guess hospitality career was getting more and more serious, and I was getting more kind of drawn into it, and I it kind of I had a decision to make, I think, and the excitement of being in a kitchen with people, and the heat and the rush of it all, and being part of it, I think just pulled me in. And I think it's I don't know if it's a positive or negative thing, but you do get an instant gratification of when you're in a kitchen or working in hospitality of success. Like you make something, and or you cook something great and someone gives you praise, or you're seeing a guest eat and they're enjoying it, and you just get an instant gratification. So it's almost a selfish kind of thing that I think it's very. I mean, it's there, and it's. I don't think it's what drives me today at all, but it's definitely something that maybe pulled me in, and I very quickly walked away from uni and kind of just followed that path. Yeah.
In the early years, what were the really important venues and people that you worked with as you started to sort of forge a career in food?
Well, I think the probably a pivotal moment was when I realised that, all right, I've made the decision to walk away from uni, so I've got to make something of this now, because I've made a decision there. And at the time, there was a restaurant, or there still is a restaurant called Africola, run by Duncan, who is quite a big figure, and he's a character. And I was intrigued by Africola, and I'd kind of dined there a few times, and it was what I was feeling in the kitchen. It was like that on steroids. Like it was intense and loud and busy, and I felt like I was watching all the chefs, and I just thought they're all rock stars, and that's what I think I want. So I remember it so clearly, just walking I think it was a Tuesday afternoon, walking into Africola when they weren't open, and walking straight up to Duncan and just saying, "Oh, I want a job." And he kind of looked at me thinking, "Who is this guy?" And he said, "Well, like, what's your experience?" Asked me this, and I didn't have a lot. And he kind of still gave me a chance, or maybe he just didn't think I was going to, rock up. But he said, "All right, be here on Tuesday with your knives." And sure enough, I rolled in, and I ended up staying there for a few years, and that was quite a fast learning curve, and I think it was intense, and I very much enjoyed it, and I thought that's what cooking was while I was there, and I thought that was what I wanted, and it's incredible, and I think there's a lot of credit that goes to places like that you learn so much, and they're they forge the way for a lot of restaurants, and that's kind of what I had in my mind. I was like, this is it. And then this restaurant started kind of, I guess, popping up on my radar at the time when I was thinking about moving on from Africola. And it was a restaurant run by, well, it was going to be opened by three very, I guess, interesting characters from the Adelaide Hills, all kind of part of the natural wine world at the time. And there was a little restaurant called the Summertown Aristologist, and I started seeing these photos pop up of this farm and these vegetables that just looked like nothing I'd ever seen, and they were harvesting these asparagus, and they were raising pigs, and they were doing all this stuff that I just suddenly that lit another fire inside me, and I kind of looked at it and thought, maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe I want to learn instead of being this rock star and being in a busy, loud kitchen, and instead of working towards that, I thought maybe I wanted to learn the processes a bit more, and learn how to make cheese, and learn what it means to mill grain and make bread, and I guess move towards a lot more natural way of cooking, and something that's maybe slightly more connected to origin and the farming. And it's a totally different world, I think. And I kind of started getting pulled into that, and I was helping the chef at the time there, Ollie, who's just an amazing chef who had so much knowledge in fermentation, and I really enjoyed that. And I thought at the time, I was like, oh, if one day I could, work in a place like this and run a place like this, it would be an absolute dream. And then, as you do when you're a bit younger, I decided I was gonna book a one-way flight overseas, and went with one of my mates, and left all that behind and kind of travelled for a year, just backpacking around Europe and eating everywhere, going through Eastern Europe, through Georgia, through Turkey, and spent some time in Morocco, and that was another whole food experience where a lot of the food that I was eating that I really enjoyed and connected with was this more simple produce-driven kind of cookery, and yeah.
Was there any experience, within those countries that you mentioned that really stands out for you that had an impact on you?
Well, I think there was so many. Like, there's so many that I think I still kind of reach back to when I'm thinking about cooking or when ingredients pop up. But I think it's the simple things. Like in Georgia, I was there in summer and eating these tomatoes off, would buy these tomatoes off an old lady with a little stall on the side of the road. And they were just the most incredible tomatoes I'd ever had. And buying these bags of raspberries that someone had gone and foraged from the hillside, and eating these blueberries when we did a walk through the mountains, and eating these blueberries and raspberries and everything that was growing there. And it was so wild, and there was nothing done to anything. And it just felt, that was something that will stick with me. And I think, a lot of that and eating. I think I had a moment at one of this little restaurant when we were traveling down along the Black Sea, and went to this restaurant, and there was no English being spoke, but we somehow communicated about the menu, which we couldn't read either. And what ended up happening, the cook came out and he just said, "Come with me," and he brought us into the kitchen, and he had all this food in the kitchen, and he said, just like, "What do you want?" basically. And we were pointing to different things, and it was a lot of braised beans and like braised meats, and these what felt like my grandmother's cooking. And I sat down, and I still remember it so clearly, but we sat down, and there was this crusty bread on the table, and we just sat there almost in silence eating. And I just looked at my mate Sam, and I just said, "Mate, like, I don't think I've eaten food like this since my grandma passed away." And it was like far out. I was like, this is cooking, this is like what it's all about. But yeah, there's plenty of moments like that. And,
that sounds almost dreamlike. But how did you go from that to sort of working in Michelin-star restaurants in London and finding your way through there? Was it challenging?
It was, and I think it was. I mean, how I ended up there was almost by chance or by mistake or accident. I don't really know, but I had spent some time down in Morocco chasing surf, and all my mates had left by that point, and I was there for quite some time, and at some point I sat myself down, and I kind of said, "Look, if you don't leave right now, you're not going to leave Morocco, so you'd better just book a flight." And I booked a flight to London with the plans to just fly straight back to Australia. And I went. I'd had a bit of it was a rough few days, I think, and I landed in London, and I think I linked up with a few friends that I'd met from in Adelaide through the years, and I went to this restaurant called Leroy in Shoreditch, which is a little, I guess, bistro wine bar, which just happened to have a Michelin star, and it was a beautiful little spot. And I went there the first night, first meal I'd had in the UK, and I really enjoyed it. And the people there were really lovely, and I met Sam Kamienko, who was the chef there at the time, and he offered me a job on the first night that I was in London, and I just kind of thought, nah, I'm not doing this. I'm going back to Australia. And then I met someone else, a guy called Chase Levecki, who had a restaurant called Two Lights at the time. And I kind of thought, it's pretty cool what he's doing. And I thought maybe I'll just see where this goes. And so I ended up doing a few days with Chase, and he offered me a job. And I thought, maybe I will stay in London. And then Sam from Leroy kept kind of pestering me, and he's like, you don't want to work at Two Lights, you want to come and work at Leroy with me. And even though Two Lights was more what I was familiar with, a more, I guess, progressive style of cooking, I guess Sam wore me down a bit, and I ended up going back to Leroy and learning more of the basics of French cookery and that produce driven cooking, and I ended up really enjoying it there, and I stayed for about a year, and just I think it was another very formative moment in my cooking career, and learning was just learning the simplicity of it, and following the traditions, and almost being in the routine and flow of cooking with the seasons in such a crazy busy industrial city as well. It was almost like it was almost counterintuitive, but it was a really lovely time, and I think I've made friends there that will last on throughout my life, which was really special.
Copenhagen got itself on the world culinary map quite a bit of time ago, and we all know the many reasons why. But what did you take from your time there?
Yeah, I dipped in and out of there a few times. I think I was always in awe of what was being achieved in Copenhagen, and I was lucky enough to meet some people that were able to give me some time in their kitchens, and I think I guess I learnt again this kind of focus of ingredients, especially at restaurants like Relais, where they had a farm connected to them. Just seeing how focused they were on using every part of the ingredient and using them in a simplistic way. I think, it's very interesting, because when I eventually moved back to Australia, I think I appreciated it even more than when I was there. When I think they grow amazing vegetables there, but we have an environment that actually flourishes in terms of agriculture and farming. But I think it was it's a great place to be. I mean, it's the center of the world for cooking, and I guess that's where I really started to connect more with James, who now is a great friend and a business partner. But he was at Noma for a very long time, and I was always just absolutely in awe of what they were doing, and always wanted to at some point kind of see what they did and be involved in it.
You mentioned Summertown Aristologist a bit earlier. When you came back to Australia, it became a bigger part of your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it certainly did. It was another one of those things where I remember it very clearly, of sitting at this beautiful place on the canal in London, and the place called the Towpath Cafe, and my phone started ringing, and I looked at it, and it was a guy called Aaron Fenwick, who was one of the owners of the Summertown Aristologist. And I thought, oh, should I answer this? Like, I don't know. And I picked the phone up, and he had me on speaker with the other two owners. And it was totally out of the blue. And he just said, look, Ollie's leaving, Ollie and Brie are leaving, and the previous chefs. And I'd actually just had lunch with them a few weeks ago in the UK, and I thought, what the hell? And he said, do you want to come back? And do you want to take over the Aristologist? And it almost didn't feel real at the time, because it was just it was a restaurant that I just put on such a pedestal, and I looked up to it so much in terms of the ethos of it and the integrity, and it just runs so deep through everything that they do. And yeah, I just thought, well, maybe that's my time's up overseas, and maybe it's time to come home. And sure enough, it all kind of fell into place, and I ended up spending almost 4 years cooking at the Aristologist, and it was the most amazing time. It was really, really special.
How much did it change your approach to cookery during your time there? But do you have any stories of how you did change?
It immensely changed my cooking, my philosophy. It was eye-opening. So I think I was very fortunate to have some mentors, and now they've become very great friends when I first got back, to help me through, I guess, the teething and the learning of being in this new space and this quite unique little restaurant. I had Luke Burgess for the first few weeks when I was back, and then Dave Moyle came through, and Ali Curry as well. And I just learnt a lot of different things from them, and I ended up, I guess, kind of not conning my friend into coming back, but I had a good friend, Ethan, who was living in Mexico, and I kind of persuaded him to come back and run this little restaurant with me. And I think together, like from what I learnt from Luke and Dave and Ali, and me and Ethan both kind of bounced ideas off each other, we kind of formed this philosophy surrounding our own cooking that was purely ingredients based. And we went from buying a little bit of veg at the start of my time there, and buying veg from local farmers still, but we were buying veg, to kind of having this philosophy that it was a hard line. We weren't buying any veg from anywhere else. We're only using what we grew, and would only use the really kind of the fishermen that we really trusted and the farmers that we really trusted. And within that, we built, I guess, a community of amazing producers, and we kind of built this I guess machine of like how are we going to make a menu with what we've got. And it was frugal at some times. Me and Ethan would be harvesting vegetables, and we'd wander down to the garden and would look around and just think, geez, like, what are we going to do this week? There's a couple of kohlrabi, there's a few leaves of rainbow chard, and so we became very creative. And we also, I think, one of the most interesting things that we learnt was the value of vegetables. And there's a lot of restaurants around which I love and respect, but their value is in beef and caviar and truffles and the luxury ingredients. But when you've seen a leek or a carrot or a beetroot planted, and it's growing for 3 months and through the winter, and you finally pull it out of the ground, and it might be bent or gnarly, or it might take some work to make it look beautiful, but the flavor in it and the work that's gone into it that you've seen makes it so much more luxurious than any bump of caviar or any, piece of farmed beef. When you're just looking at this thing and you're like, we've been waiting for it, and now's the time to take it out the ground. So that was really interesting, and I think it was also very difficult, but trying to, I guess, not convince the guests and customers, but show them why that carrot is worthy, or why these leeks, why they're worth what they're worth. Because people are very used to just buying a bunch of leeks from the supermarket, and they're not necessarily a prized ingredient, or they're used to just buying these mass grown lettuces, and they're like, well, I can just buy a couple of lettuce for $5 at the supermarket. Like, I don't see what the difference is between what's at the supermarket and what you have toiled over and grown in a very specific way. So that's been a challenge, I think, of that restaurant throughout its time, but it was also something that I think was it was so beautiful, working in that way. And I think that's probably the main thing in my I guess my cooking career that I think will stick with me forever. Yeah.
It's an amazing approach, sort of letting produce shine and simplicity thrive. But is it hard as a chef to put that on a plate for consumers paying and with their expectations and getting it right? Like, how do you manage all of that?
Well, I think it is really hard. It's really hard because of partly what people are conditioned with these days, I think. Like I was saying with, you go to the supermarket and you see a vegetable that you're like, well, I don't see what the difference is between that and what they're serving at the Summertown Aristotle. Just like, it doesn't make sense. How can they charge $25 for a plate of carrots? But I think there's that side of it, and the other side of it is also for us. If you've got a good farmer like Tim Spreadbury, he's growing incredible produce. If you've got a good farmer, most of the work's done. So you might pay more for your vegetables, but you don't have to do anything. You might just be able to, highlight flavor profiles in it or help the vegetable along a little bit, but you don't need to manipulate it to look like something or be something that it wasn't, because it's already so delicious. So I think in my mind, it makes sense to cook like that, especially if you've got good producers and farmers around you.
Well, you're on the verge of opening your own place. What are you most looking forward to?
I think I'm most looking forward to, well, there's a few things. I think moving back into that community that I was in for so long, and seeing familiar faces and cooking for people and that I love and respect. And I think that's part of it. Another part of it is, bringing this dream to reality that we've had over the last years, and kind of seeing where that goes, in seeing what happens in the future if if we can keep working towards that end goal. And the other thing, which I guess I'm excited about, but also it's nervous about, is cooking in a different way, and forcing myself, like, I'm comfortable cooking the way I cook, but trying to find a diverse offering for a morning offering, and trying to make it sustainable so that I'm not working too hard. I'm not it's not kind of taking from my day-to-day life, and still trying to find a balance, I think, is the one of the things. But learning new things as well. Like, I'm not a baker, but I want to make baguettes, and I want I want to, I'd love to make croissants, and that's something that excites me as well, but also kind of scares me. So, yeah, because I know not that I don't have an off switch, but if I start, if I get this idea in my head that maybe I want to do croissants, then it's like, well, I guess I'm going to try and do it, and that's going to take a lot of energy, and I'm up for it. But yeah, it's a funny little kind of process, I think. Yeah.
Well, Tom, it's been an absolute joy catching up with you, and I can't wait to see what you do there at Thelma. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.